My mother-in-law slapped me hard across the face, the stay hitting like fire as I stood there in shock. Her eyes were filled with anger, and the air in the room was heavy and unpleasant. Nathan merely stood there and allowed his mother's anger to control him, despite my turning to him in the hopes that he would step in. At that time, I truly felt isolated. I'm Madison, a 42-year-old interior designer from Greenville, South Carolina. It felt so safe to live. I had supportive parents, a successful career, and a husband I adored. But everything changed when my parents passed so suddenly. As a tremendous legacy, they left me a gorgeous mansion worth $150 million, filled with memories and their dreams for my future. My husband, Nathan, and I moved into this home shortly after their passing, and each room is a reminder of my family's love and devotion. By making this house our sanctuary, a location where we could work toward our objectives and eventually start a family, I was determined to honor their legacy. Nathan, a 41-year-old project manager, appeared kind and enthusiastic as we settled in. Then his mother made him see things differently. Valerie was informed of the bequest. What began as sincere congratulations quickly turned into something self-serving. Valerie started making references to the idea of benefiting from each other's money and familial support. One afternoon, I was completing a new interior design project. Valerie showed up out of the blue, her demeanor combative. She didn't waste much time devising a novel plan. Valerie wanted to spend $12 million on an opulent home for herself and claimed she should have some of the money I inherited. She believed that she should have the same quality of life that I had been lucky enough to have. "Madison," she said, her smile taut. "Think of it as an investment in our family's future. After all, if you can live in luxury, why shouldn't we all?" I stayed calm in disbelief. I said that I couldn't feel well about giving away so much of my fortune. Since this house was a part of my family's history, I had specific ambitions to keep it up. Because of the cloudiness on her face, you don't have to worry about supporting your family. She turned to Nathan and attempted to include him in the conversation. "Nathan, doesn't Madison's desire to share some of what she's been given make sense?" Nathan seemed uncomfortable, obviously divided between his mother and me. He had always been close to her, and she was trying to get him to come along. "Madison, perhaps we ought to at least discuss it," he said. We looked at each other hesitantly. My heart fell. The man who had once been my rock now seemed to be failing, and the weight of their expectations seemed like a burden. "Please, Nathan," I said, "this house is more than just wealth, and I wouldn't give up. It is my parents' legacy. They worked diligently to construct this. There are other factors besides money. It's important to honor their memories. It's too much for me to simply quit." Valerie's eyes narrowed, and her voice grew icier. "Remember that without our family's support, Madison wouldn't have had anyone to turn to after your parents died. And you repay us in this manner." My pulse quickened. "But Valerie," I didn't panic. "I don't owe you $12 million for a gorgeous mansion, even though I appreciate your assistance. I would gladly help in other ways, but not this. Is she the woman you were married to?" She glared at Nathan, obviously annoyed. "Nathan, someone who puts money before family?" Nathan's gaze dropped to the floor as he shifted awkwardly. "Madison, she's not asking for the entire fortune. It's just a portion of it. We may be able to come to an understanding." My heart ached. The man I assumed would be there forever. My side was having trouble now. "Nathan, I'm not going to compromise on this. This property and the fortune mean the world to me. I've already made enough sacrifices, so I won't be asked to give up what my parents have worked so hard to accomplish." Valerie sneered in her typical contemptuous tone. "We don't hoard family shares, but when you get a little cash, you act like you're better than us." Then she ran away, leaving a tense silence behind her. I turned to Nathan in the hopes that he would comprehend, but his silence only served to anger me further. Valerie's attitude cooled over the next few days. Her visits were marked by cold remarks about selfishness and family obligations, while Nathan, rather than standing up for me, grew distant as he struggled to balance his mother's demands with my resolve. One evening, Alice, Nathan's sister, and Valerie showed up. Their faces tensed as they sat in the living room, and I braced myself for what seemed like an impending attack. Valerie wasted no time. "Madison, it's clear that you don't understand the significance of family obligations. Since we are family, we should all benefit from your exceptional wealth. Asking for $12 million is reasonable, but you keep refusing. It's incredibly selfish." Her voice was joined by Alice, full of disdain. "We're struggling, therefore, you shouldn't keep everything. You see, that's how you look." I looked at Nathan, expecting him to step in, but he sat silently, taking long breaths and avoiding eye contact. I responded that this legacy was not meant to satisfy wants unrelated to my actual requirements, but rather to safeguard my future. "I will not apologize for keeping what my parents left me." Valerie's face flushed with anger. She leaped to her feet, her eyes blazing. "You think you're better than us because of this money. Don't you? You wouldn't have anything without this family's assistance." Despite my best efforts to maintain my composure, her remarks struck a chord. "While I've helped, I won't give you millions just because you ask." Valerie's patience snapped in a furious jolt. She put out her arm and slapped me hard across the face. I staggered back in shock, feeling the sting on my cheek. "Are you being disrespectful to me?" Her face twisted in anger. She spat. "You don't understand devotion or family." Alice growled. "You're not welcome here. This house would be a better place if you didn't help me, Madison." My emotional outburst was repressed. "Get out of my house." I spoke in a calm but firm voice. "You have crossed all boundaries, and I will not tolerate this any longer." Nathan, torn between his mother and his attachment to me, stared in shock. But instead of defending me, he turned away and avoided making eye contact. With no sign of regret, Alice and Valerie left. I straightened as a surge of strength passed through me. I rubbed my cheek, the sting reminding me how far they had pushed me. "Nathan," my voice was tremulous, a mix of hurt and determination. "Will you really let this happen? Your family just attacked me in our home, and you're simply standing here and saying nothing." Nathan whispered, "Maybe if you had just listened, this wouldn't have happened," with a conflicted tone. Because his remarks were taken more seriously than the slap, "You think I deserve this?" My voice was skeptical as I asked, "You're willing to let them treat me like that and then hold me responsible?" As she walked away, Valerie's irate voice echoed across the room. "This isn't about Maison. Change your mind or give us what we deserve." I lost patience. "I'm finished. I will make sure you are evicted if you refuse to go, and you cannot make me give up what is properly mine." I took a big breath, pulled out my phone, and called my lawyer. Valerie tried to grab my phone, but I stepped aside to keep it out of her reach, and her face twisted in anger. She snarled, "You're doing something wrong. Your family is being betrayed by you." "You'll regret this, Madison," Alice continued. Taking my hand, "No one fights against us, and we win." They were stopped in their tracks by me. "Go out of my house now. If you come back here without my permission, I'll contact the cops." Valerie smiled at her face. "Defiant. We'll see about that." With a last frown. As Valerie and Alice bounded out, there was an overwhelming silence. Nathan lingered for a while, giving me one more bewildered look before heading out with them, leaving me standing by myself in my home. As soon as they left, I felt the weight of what had happened. When I was attacked in my own home, Nathan, the man who had once promised to stand beside me, put his family before me. The betrayal felt like a physical blow, but I knew I couldn't allow them to intimidate me into parting with my riches. I picked up my phone and called Mr. Anderson, my lawyer. He listened to him patiently and reassuringly as he told Madison everything. "Oh," he replied, "it appears like your in-laws are attempting to exploit your inheritance. We can take swift legal action to safeguard your property and put an end to further abuse. Asking for a restraining order against them is what I would advise. This will make it impossible for them to come near you or the mansion without suffering severe consequences." A rush of relief washed over me. "I'm grateful, Mr. Anderson." I will promptly gather any necessary documentation. My only goal is to ensure that they are unable to repeat this type of behavior. Good plan, he remarked, adding that everything of today's activities, including the physical assault and any witnesses, ought to be recorded. If at all possible, this will help us present a strong argument. Determined. I spent the next few hours gathering all the required paperwork, such as property deeds, my parents' will, and any other records proving that I was the only owner of the mansion. Every detail of the fight, including Nathan's reluctance to intervene and Valerie's physical assault, was painstakingly documented by me. The following day, I went to see Mr. Anderson at his office. As soon as I handed him the papers, he asked for a restraining order against Valerie, Alice, and all others who attempted to deny me my property rights. Within a few days, the restraining order was in force for the first time in a long time. There was something serene about me. However, Nathan's behavior just became more distant. He avoided eye contact, spent much of his time at his mother's house, and showed no remorse for the actions of his family. One evening, Nathan arrived home with a serious expression. He was sitting across from me and shifted uncomfortably. Madison, this whole situation has gotten out of hand. My family members feel duped. Is there no chance that this can be resolved out of court? I looked at my patient and saw his thinning. Nathan, your family has gone above and beyond. You did nothing but stand there while Valerie violently assaulted me. This is more than just a disagreement. The objective here is to protect what is rightfully mine. He sighed and turned his head away. I just want my family to remain. I could hear the pain in my voice when I responded. What about me? Nathan, I was destined to be a part of your family as well. If you want me to give up my parents' legacy, what does family loyalty look like to you, if anything? I felt sad but more resolute than before because he didn't respond, and after 10 minutes of stillness, he got up and departed. I focused on restating my limits as the days passed. I was determined to protect my inheritance and my parents' legacy, even if it meant standing alone. Nathan grew increasingly withdrawn and chose to spend most of his time with Valerie and Alice, leaving me to deal with the emotional impact. Just when I thought everything had finally settled down, Valerie did something even bolder. One day, she visited Tao at the estate with Alice and Nathan's brother Jeremy. They had brought movers and were prepared to move in, as if they had every right to the house. As I look at them through the window, I get a surge of rage and disbelief. How could they knowingly disobey the restraining order and believe they were above the law? I picked up my phone right away and dialed 911. Hello, my name is Madison Blake. Calmly, I said, my main laws continue to encroach on my land in spite of a restraining order that the court has imposed. Even movers have been dispatched to break into my residence. Right now, I need the police here. The dispatcher assured me that officers were on their way to take me. I went outside to confront them because I wouldn't let them bother me any longer. Valerie had a disdainful look on her face when she saw me. Madison, stop this madness. This is a family issue. The cops have no place here. If you were decent at all, you would share what you had. I spoke up and refused to back down. My house is mine, so you can't take it. As she stepped forward, Alice remarked mockingly, you're making this more difficult than it has to be. By just handing up the $12 million, Madison made life easier for everyone. Before I could respond, I heard sirens coming, and Valerie's face turned white. As the reality of the situation struck in, the police arrived, assessing the scene with serious expressions. I approached the officer issuing the restraining order. The court has ordered these individuals to stay off my property. They are attempting to violate that injunction by occupying my home. I explained. The cop nodded as he turned to Valerie. Alice and Jeremy looked at each other sharply. Madam, you have to go immediately or risk legal action for breaching a court-issued restraining order and trespassing on private property. Valerie protested, raising her voice. A family owns and operates this business. You have no right to interfere. The policeman didn't falter. Failure to comply will result in your arrest. Grudgingly, Valerie stepped back and turned to face me, anger pouring in her eyes. This isn't about Maison. You'll regret leaving this family behind. I stared her in the eye with fresh strength. You don't own this house anymore. Valerie, I refuse to let anyone take away my house, while the authorities escorted them off the property. A wave of relief swept over me. I had defended what was legitimately mine by resisting those who attempted to control and influence me. After that day, I felt a shift in myself. Although the confrontation had been exhausting, it marked the end of an era. I realized that I could no longer cohabitate with someone who allowed his family to infringe upon my personal space and dignity. The treachery went too far, and I knew it was time to start over for my future and mental health. Later that evening, Nathan returned, looking exhausted and conflicted. Clearly, his mother had told him what had transpired. His face was a mixture of anger and despair as he approached me. Madison was his first. Gently, "We can't go on like this. This is not the life I imagined us leading. My family feels hurt and abandoned. Is it not possible to avoid all of this legal trouble?" As I looked at him, I had a mix of pain and clarity. "Nathan, I did everything I could to make sure your family understood my limits. I tried to establish common ground with them, but they wouldn't listen. You did nothing but watch as your mother beat me up. This goes beyond a familial conflict. It's about safety, respect, and protecting what is rightfully mine." Nathan groaned, unable to meet my gaze. "I just want my family to remain." He muttered, "What about me?" "Nathan?" I replied. My voice trembled with emotion. "You always put your family's needs ahead of mine, even though I was supposed to be a part of yours too. Do I have to tolerate that kind of loyalty?" The room was dense with silence. As he thought about what I had said, Nathan shuffled uncomfortably and finally seemed to grasp that this was it. His shoulders slumped as I couldn't keep my gaze on him, and he nodded slightly. "I guess it's impossible to undo what has already happened," he whispered, almost to himself. "Nathan, no. I can't keep sacrificing my peace for a one-sided relationship," I said kindly. "We must move forward with our lives." Then I asked him to get his belongings and leave the mansion. There were no objections or requests for a review. Within hours he was gone, and I stood alone in the solitude of the home. Even so, I was still troubled by the choice. Knowing that I had regained control over my life also made me feel lighter in the weeks that followed. I put everything I had into rebuilding. I hired builders to keep renovating parts of the estate, transforming it into a symbol of my strength and independence. With each piece of art or piece of furniture acting as a reminder of my resilience and new beginnings, every space became a celebration of my journey. The mansion, which had previously served as a gloomy reminder of my parents' ancestry, was converted into a sanctuary and a site of empowerment. In an effort to give back to the community, I reconnected with old acquaintances, put my all into my paintings, and even began assisting at local art events. With every step forward, I felt the weight of the past lift, replaced by a sense of quiet confidence and joy I hadn't known in years. One evening, I was viewing the sunset from the estate's enormous balcony. I felt calm for the first time in a long time. Despite the challenging journey, I emerged stronger, more confident, and ready to embrace the life I had fought so hard to protect. This house was more than just a place to live. It served as both a reminder of my independence and proof of my fortitude. For the first time in years, I felt prepared to move forward, knowing that my life was now entirely mine and that I could shape my future free from the grip of the past. Thank you for reading.